Welcome to Make That Paper, the show where we talk about all the crazy jobs we do to make the cash we need to pursue our artistic dreams. I memorized it.
Good for you. And so you can buy the full set of McDonald's Quarter Pounder ingredient scented candles. I like the ketchup.
That's gross. Today, we are talking about that gap trap and the restaurant flaunt, or how about being a data entry sentry? We are your hosts, Jaime Parker Stickle
and Jason Bieber.
And in this episode, we are joined by an alumnus of the Second City in Chicago who did us all a great favor when he brought his immeasurable talents to Hollywood so he could share them with the world.
Since then, he has graced your screen in the television phenomenon Wandavision, the heartbreakingly hilarious A Series of Unfortunate Events, and the comedic monolith that is Curb Your Enthusiasm, just, to name a few.
We are so fortunate to know him and to welcome him to the show. Please clap loudly, louder, wherever you are listening, for the incredibly talented and funny Ithamar Enriquez.
Yeah.
Yay! Thank you. I love that intro. You would think that I wrote it myself. It was so complimentary.
Yes.
That
was our goal is to take the bio you sent us and make you question whether it's good enough.
I was gonna say the bio I sent was 7 pages, guys. How was it just a few lines?
A lot of trimming going on.
A lot of trimming.
Very good editors.
Yep.
But I honestly, did not know what this was.
This is a podcast.
I didn't know that. I just want to say something really.
I'm glad you memorized the first line, though.
I'm glad you're really good at editing. I had to tell you something really quick.
We'll see about
I
that.
worked at the Beverly Center, and I used to work at the makeup counters, and I would go to different stores. I was like like an event specialist type person. But we had a Gap right next to us. And I kid you not, one of the makeup women I worked with was married to the drummer of, I don't know, some big band. I can't remember who it is right now.
Let's call it Aerosmith.
I don't know. I'll look it up. But the Gap was right there, and her husband worked at the Gap, and he hired all his actor friends. And I have to tell you, they're all big time actors now. I couldn't name any of their names right off the top of my head, but it was.
Let's say Aerosmith.
Yeah.
They were the members of Aerosmith.
No, they were seriously all within 10 years on HBO shows. And I was like, what the?
Wow.
And they're all Gap employees. And you worked at the Gap.
I sure did. In Chicago. It was in Chicago, but still, yeah. I don't know what the connection there is.
Wrong Gap, buddy.
It could have come so much sooner if I worked at the Gap at the Beverly Center.
I just think it's so strange. I watched that SNL sketch growing up with Sandler and all the guys doing the Gap, and only to work next to a Gap, and all the people in it became famous. It was just really blew my mind. And then you have Gap on here, and it's weird for me that dudes are working at the Gap in the first place.
I'll tell you exactly why I worked at the Gap. So I moved to Chicago right after college, and I was in Lincoln Park. And basically I was like, I need to find a job. And back then you kind of just walked around and saw who had signs in the window. And 2 blocks away from the apartment where I was living was a Gap. And I was like, sure, why not? Why not? It was literally just looking for signs that said, hiring today or whatever.
Because you weren't looking on Craigslist yet.
Right. Craigslist was not, it wasn't really a thing. Yeah. So I remember I walk in, I apply, and then they call me in for an interview, and the manager was really nice. And again, this is kind of like my first foray into I'm looking for a job for myself. So she asked me, why do you want to work at the Gap? And literally
to pay my rent.
I said, I live 2 blocks away. And I said that. And then right away she was like, don't say that in your next interview. I was like, got it. Got it. So I knew I was getting a second interview, but then she was like, do not mention that the only reason you're here is because it's 2 blocks away. We want to hear, I'm a people person, I love clothes or whatever, which was not the case for me. But yeah, so I did learn. So and then from there, which I'm sure we'll get into later, eventually moving on to Gap Kids and Baby Gap, because then I drank the Kool-Aid and I was just hooked. That was it.
Yeah, well, once you go down the Gap hole.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So let's go backwards for 1 second. you graduated college, but you didn't go to college in Illinois.
No, I went to Arizona State. I grew up in Texas, went to school in Arizona, and then right after college, moved to Chicago to pursue my improv dreams.
Improv dreams. Okay, that's
Mhm.
interesting because did you have a theater degree? Like, what did you study in college?
So I studied music theater,
Great.
and I
Yes.
thought
That
that
makes sense.
I thought that I was gonna like go to Broadway afterwards
Mm-hmm.
because it's so easy, right? So
Sure.
oh,
It's so
I'll go to
easy.
Broadway.
It's great.
And then there was a group on campus at ASU. It was an improv group called Bear in Mind, BARREN Mind. Bear in Mind.
I get it.
Yep. And they were doing short form improv. And at that point, I had been a fan of the original, the British Whose Line Is It Anyway? And I remember watching in high school and just being like, what is this? I don't understand what this is. It's not stand up. They're basically making up sketches. Like it's like SNL, but they're making it up. And that's amazing. And I had already been a comedy fan at that point and knew that I was funny and blah, blah, blah. So then when I saw them on campus, I auditioned, got in on my second audition the following year. And then
Did you tell them you lived close?
yeah, on campus. I'm like, I'm just
Why
across
do you
the
want to be a part of this troop?
Right.
I live close.
And then once I did that, my focus completely shifted. I was like, I just want to do this now. Like,
Yeah.
Got
I'll
it.
stay here and do music theater because that's what I chose. And there's no degree in improv. So I'm just gonna. It was a weekly show, so that was really fun. I found the people that are, a lot of them are still friends of mine today, and found the people who like spoke my language when it came to like comedy and interests and nerding out about all things comedy. So then once I started doing improv in Arizona, I looked into like, well, where is improv? What does improv lead to? That led me to Second City in Chicago. One of the touring companies came to Phoenix. I saw them perform, and then I was like, this is a job? Like, you can also do this for a living? Later to find out it's not a complete living, but again, we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
So then, yeah, that led me to just moving to Chicago after. I was, well, then this is what I have to do. So
That's great.
that's why I did it.
Did you go alone, or did the troop go, or anybody else follow
The troop
suit?
went, well, we went, the first Chicago Improv Festival happened, I think I was a junior in college. So as a troop, we went to Chicago for like, a weekend, and we fell in love with the city. So that helped.
Yeah.
A couple of people from Bear in Mind eventually made it to Chicago. But at the time that I went there by myself, not knowing anyone. I was just a guy from the Southwest, now thrown into the winters of the Midwest and not knowing a single soul. So yeah, it was challenging, but it all worked out, I think. So
Speaking of working out, so you show up in Lincoln Park, which is pretty nice. Is that?
yeah, a friend of mine who I worked with at the music library at Arizona State just so happened to know someone in Chicago who was looking for a roommate at the time. It was very, very reasonable at the time. It was $400 a month.
Amazing.
In Lincoln Park, washer and dryer in the apartment. Like it was like I know, it's crazy. It's insane to think about it now.
So you're like, do I actually need this job? I could just coast on something.
The sad part is I definitely still need the job. Oh, yeah.
So was your first stop going down to Second City, or was your first stop going to the, hitting the streets and finding a job?
So I guess I'm sorry, I should backtrack a little bit. Before I moved to Chicago, I spent a summer there in between my junior and senior year. Because when we went to the first improv festival, I asked if Second City was doing any internships during the summer.
Nice.
And the person who was organizing the festival was like, we don't have any internships directly tied to the improv festival, but Second City always does internships with the training center. You have to fly up here and find somewhere to live, but so I lived in Chicago for the summer before. While I was there that summer, I took one class, auditioned for the conservatory, and then they said, you made it to the conservatory. I told them, I still have one more year of college left. They said, we'll hold your spot.
Great.
So that gave me the initiative to go back, knowing, okay, I know that if I go back to Chicago, I have a spot in their conservatory. So that's why I ended up going back. So when I landed in Chicago, I knew that I was going to start classes and then therefore look for a job.
And I'm just going to say this because things are different now amongst, groundlings and Second City and UCB. Back in the day, not that we're all that old, but back in the day when you had to audition to get into the conservatory or audition to get into groundlings, it was a big deal. Like a lot of people didn't make it. You had to audition multiple times. It wasn't a corporate thing where they were trying to bring in students. That it was a big fucking deal.
They were very selective and there weren't as many classes, right?
When I did my groundlings audition, I was like the only one in my group that made it. And it like felt shitty, but at the same time I was like, fuck.
Yeah.
You know,
and there's also something about the word conservatory that like, I remember going back to Phoenix being like, guys, I made it to the Second City Conservatory.
I'm in the conservatory.
Which is, it's a big deal. It's one class a week. But when you say it like that, you're like, oh my God, it's like, is it 24/7 like comedy in this campus? It's like, no, but still, it's the conservatory.
I'll tell you, I just finished grad school and I applied for a fellowship and I earned the fellowship and everyone was like, oh my God, it's the same thing as a conservatory. And I was like, I'm just teaching a class one day and it's a week-long thing. And everyone's like, when's your fellowship over? Is it good for a year? Like, what are you doing? And I was like, yeah, it's intense. Like I just eventually just started playing it up because I was like,
sure.
Yes.
You tell them there's a t-shirt at the end of it?
There's a t-shirt at the end of it.
With the old Second City logo?
Yeah.
I got extra new Twitter followers from that stuff. Yeah, it's a weird, when you attach language to something, it's always like, if you don't know, it's very prestigious, right? Yeah. It's like, oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
What I love is that you went and you interviewed at the Second City and they wanted you, but you
made them hold your spot for a year
because you didn't live close enough.
Because you didn't live close
enough. Exactly. Everything is about how close I live to things.
Did you ever think to ask, could I do this virtually? No, because you'd have to do the computer lab, and they're like, we don't even have a computer. It's all on receipt.
But like, what's virtually? Yeah,
it doesn't exist.
Virtual.
What's virtually, Ithamar? This is the '60s. I look very good for my age.
You look amazing for your age, and for the amount of LSD I know you've done, I'm very impressed.
Can I sidetrack on that for 1 second? I was picking up our son from elementary school. He's in first grade yesterday. And one of the moms said to me, oh, my son said he wants to build a time machine so he can go back to the 60s and see the dinosaurs. So Ithamar, have you seen the dinosaurs?
Yeah.
I did. I grew up with dinosaurs. My car you had to run it with your feet. We had a pterodactyl blender.
Oh my God, I love that.
Mm-hmm.
So much exercise. Everybody was healthier.
Hey, real quick, the class you taught, it was at Arizona
State University's Virginia G. Piper, Desert Nights program. Their master's writing program.
So y'all are a little simpatico there.
Connection.
Little ASU connection. They're great, actually. I mean, I think they're wonderful. It's a wonderful school. Good people.
Now you taught yours virtually, so Ithamar would not have known how to attend.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I teach virtually.
I'm assuming that we're all in the same room right now. Is that how it's working? Okay,
and I want to thank you for coming over.
Yeah, it's great.
Eventually, it's not going to be on a computer screen. It will be holograms. We can just,
hey,
how you doing?
That's pretty fun.
Yeah. A little pop-in hologram.
I had a talk with Elon Musk. Is that how you say his name, Elon?
I think it's Elon. Elon Musk?
But it is how you say his name.
Yes.
I just want to sound prestigious when I say
Hello. My dad's name is Alan. And he used to travel internationally a lot. And he had a number of international friends who would call him hello. Answer the phone. Is Alan there? I'm like,
listen,
no.
I can get away with saying things weird because I'm from Detroit. We have a weird accent. We say things weird. It's not Sepulveda. It was Sepulveda for the longest time. Yeah. And if you ask anyone from Michigan, they will all say, oh yeah, that was Sepulveda. Everyone. You know all the Michigan people too. It's Sepulveda, not Sepulveda.
I don't know how they know about Sepulveda.
Isn't Sepulveda like a makeup brand or like a makeup store?
You would know. You worked at Gap. Let's keep going. Were they next door?
Was your Gap at all, or were you like a freestanding
You were
Gap?
freestanding, right? In Lincoln Park?
It was freestanding. It was it was on Halstead in Lincoln Park, for those of you listening from Chicago. And it was a hybrid. It was a Gap Kids.
Ah.
That's how you ended up drinking the Kool-Aid.
That's how, yeah. And then eventually, but again, we'll get to that later, I'm sure. The baby gap also comes in later once I get hired for the touring company. But before that, I was working a lot at the Gap and Gap Kids.
So you were taking one class in the conservatory,
Mhm.
which I assume
At a time.
and at the end you would have performances. So you couldn't like audition to tour at this point.
No, I think I maybe did one. I think I auditioned once for the touring company, which was not a mistake. I'm glad I did it because at least I knew what it was, but it was definitely too early. Like I was not ready. I worked at the Gap for a year, was tired of it, wanted to change, which then led me to the Kaplan data entry. And then from there was the touring company.
Excuse us for a minute. Our sponsors have something they'd like to say to you. You know what I bet our listeners are thinking right now?
What's that, Bieber?
They're probably thinking, this podcast thing is so easy. I could start my own podcast. And you know what? They're right.
Yeah, we've been using Anchor for a few months now, and it has totally changed our game. Anchor is the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain.
It's free.
I said, let me explain.
Fine.
There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. And Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and pretty much anywhere podcasts are streamed. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. I mean, it's everything you need to make a podcast, all in one place.
And it's free.
Yes. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. See, that wasn't too bad, was it? Now let's get back to the show.
You left Gap, you went to Kaplan, which is the SAT prep class, and you were doing data entry. So you weren't like teaching kids. You were
No. It was all, and that one came from a group of friends. I was in a theater company in Chicago that used to be called Barrel of Monkeys, and now it's called Playmakers. And the whole thing is that we would teach writing workshops to children in elementary schools. And then at the end of the 6-week course, we would take some of those kids' stories and perform them as the characters with costumes and everything. So like kids would see their original stories performed, which I think there's like other groups like that out here and in Chicago. But a lot of those people worked at Kaplan because it was like the easiest job. You got benefits, you got your weekends off, it was a steady schedule, and it was like very easy. It was one of those things where it's like, I'm supposed to work 9 to 5, but I'm done at like 10:30. Like that type of like
love
thing.
that job. Were you auditioning for commercials or anything at this time?
No. At that point, it was still mostly theater. I was mostly still with Barrel of Monkeys, and then doing conservatory. And I think I got on a long form team through a theater called The Playground in Chicago. Mm-hmm. And what I liked about them is they used to have these, because in Chicago, it was very like segregated as far as the school. It's like if you performed at IO, it's because you took classes at IO. Same thing with Second City, same thing with Annoyance. And with the Playground, they would hold these auditions called, I think it was called incubator auditions. And it was basically like, everyone come and audition and we'll put you in teams. So I was put on a team at the Playground, and we had like monthly shows. And that was really good because I was able to put in my performing miles there. So that was the extent of what I was doing. Although one of my first acting gigs in Chicago before all that happened, was this thing called the Haunted L, which was it was a tour of the downtown loop of Chicago, some of the haunted places, but it was a show on the subway thing. It paid really well.
It's an elevated train.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't like a dinner theater. So, but this is the part that's really funny is, it was very confusing for people as to know that cart was a performance. Like people would buy tickets and they would sit in that cart for the show, but some people would just get on that cart thinking they're going to get to the next stop. And the show would loop around the loop 4 times with no stops.
Oh no!
So you get people sit down, they're already grumpy because they're probably on their way somewhere, and then all of a sudden, I turn around with my like engineers kind of like, welcome to haunted Chicago. And they would like look at me and then like look around and notice that we're not stopping. They get so mad, like, what the fuck? Like, what? Like, and that's like sit there for like 45 minutes until it stopped again while these actors, these annoying, enthusiastic actors are in your face singing about the history of haunted Chicago.
That
And you're
might be
trapped
my
on the
favorite
train.
job ever.
It was amazing. And because it was through the city, it paid so well. And I thought, oh, this Chicago acting thing is so easy. And of course, I didn't have another job for like however many years, but it was a really fun introduction to Chicago theater.
Yeah. I have never heard of that. And I am proud. I'm not from Chicago, but I am proud of the city of Chicago for getting on board with something like that. Pun not intended.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and they can do it because again, the L is a raised train. Like you couldn't do that in New York and be like, we're underground. Where
and you're
mass
trapped.
murder happened. We see something. Yeah.
And by the way, it wasn't like a super cool haunted. It was for families, so it wasn't like wasn't like murder mystery. It was like family friendly. So it for someone who's just trying to get from point A to B and miss the wrong car, it could be a very annoying experience.
Someone who's like sees their stop go by 4 times in a row.
Yes, while this guy's singing in their ear about Chicago.
That's amazing. Oh my God, how long did you do that? Did the program end?
It was just for like the Halloween of that year. So it was just I don't know, like a month in October.
Good gig.
Man.
That's a cool gig.
If I was in the city, I'd make that year long.
Yeah.
Were you doing that same time as the Gap? So you'd like punch out at the Gap and then head up to the L and put on your top hat?
That's right. Yep.
But let's talk about the Gap for 1 second, because I'm obsessed a little bit.
Of course.
I worked at Abercrombie.
And we are going to have to talk about employee discounts.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting to right now. I worked at Abercrombie, but only over Christmas breaks from college. And because they would, those places, I don't know if your Gap did, but in Michigan, they would hire extra staff for Christmas.
Yeah.
So I always I got it. And I did it because it was like 40% off your first 3 items because they wanted you to wear their clothes while you worked. Did you have a really good wardrobe?
No, but I'll explain. I'll explain why. So we used to get a 50% discount. But again, I was still I was so poor. I was so poor. Yeah. Dirt poor when I moved out to Chicago. And I couldn't even afford to have like a new out. And they would be like, guys, you got to keep up with the latest. We need whatever you're wearing, our customers need to see in the store, blah, 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 blah. So at the time we had the guy who ran the stock room, his name was Tom. And really cool guy who'd been there for years. Like he'd been there for so long. And was kind of like with the stock room, he wasn't a manager, but he also wasn't necessarily, no one really managed him. So he kind of had the best gig because like he didn't have to deal with anyone. He was downstairs just folding stuff, listening to Stern. He loved Howard Stern. He loved Howard Stern. But I remember one time he was like, listen, like kind of like the old like grizzled vet. He's like, this is so easy. Buy yourself a pair of jeans and a black t-shirt and you're always going to be in style with what we have in the store because we're always selling black t-shirts and we're always selling whatever Gap jean. And I was like, that is brilliant. So I was able to skate by on just wearing the black t-shirt and
you had free laundry in your apartment, so you were set.
So I could wash it as many times as I could. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I did the bare minimum at the Gap. Like it was like I was not invested at all. And thankfully, a lot of people who worked there were really cool. So it wasn't a terrible job as far as who I was working with. It became a terrible job of who I was working for as far as the public. But as far as
us.
Yeah, you too specific. No. Yes. No. But so I didn't have an amazing wardrobe. It was just black t-shirt and jeans.
I did I didn't do quite the same. But the store manager at the Abercrombie that I went to, she was like, come in the back and I'll show you like the discounted stuff, like the Miss Mart, like
clearance,
like doesn't fit anybody, weird stuff. So I did the same thing. I was able to just get a basic sweatshirt, a basic pair of jeans, and
just your basic Abercrombie bitch.
I sort of feel like they took it out of the paycheck, like my first paycheck or something. I don't remember, or maybe I just charged it, my $500 limit college credit card. Like,
Mhm.
I'll never pay this. Let's charge
Yeah.
it just to get.
And when do you tell us that that's how you met Jason? Because he was one of the bare-chested models who
He
stood
was.
in the front,
In the front, spraying that
spraying
disgusting.
the thing, and
It's
that's
funny.
when.
A boyfriend did get me the job because he
Oh, there you
was,
go.
yeah, he worked at Abercrombie. I think he probably still does work at that Abercrombie, but he was like, I can get you a job at Abercrombie over the holidays. It was funny when I broke up with him and I kept showing up for holiday work. Very uncomfortable.
I do remember that time I shaved my chest and realized that I could never be an Abercrombie model. For a number of reasons that all became evident all at the same time.
You're very much coming into your own hair now.
Yes, I've definitely embraced it, and
Yep.
I put the Nair bottle away. By the way, for those listening at home, if you do decide to Nair your chest, keep it away from your nipples and areolas.
I don't know if they even are allowed to sell Nair anymore. I'm sure they are, but that stuff is vile.
Yeah.
But
I can
speaking
imagine.
of, not speaking of.
What segue are you trying to make?
Speaking of nipples, Ithamar, when you were at the Gap,
Yeah.
No, I did want to ask you something about
Yeah.
about the public who made your job
Yeah,
hell.
the part that made it hard was it was in Lincoln Park, which is a little bit more of an affluent neighborhood and community as far as the families are concerned. So every once in a while, we'd get the parents who were kind of bossy and just very entitled, and would all of a sudden just walk in and want you to be like their private shopper. You know,
It's the fucking
to
Gap.
follow them around. I know. But then the part that was real sad is having some of the moms come in with their nannies and the child, and then asking the mom, like, what size does your child wear? And then the mom having to turn to the nanny to ask the nanny information about their own child. And that just goes to show you what kind of like customers we were dealing with at the time.
Yeah. I'm surprised mom was even there, to be
I know.
fair.
Well, you
Yep.
can't give the nanny the credit card.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
Make her use her own credit card and then tell her you'll reimburse her with interest.
That's the way to do it.
Get her own. I don't know. I don't know.
Mhm.
But at this time, when you're working at the Gap, you're taking class. Are you discovering that there are auditions in Chicago for things like TV commercials? Are you starting to find that aside from theater, that there is someplace else to go with this that provides money that you can do full time? Because you are a prolific TV actor, commercial, I mean, not TV, but you're in films now and stuff. So at what point are you like, there's more to this than just this?
The TV commercial, the on-screen stuff
On-screen,
didn't
that's the
come.
word I was looking for.
The on-screen stuff didn't come until way after I was already at Second City. So at this
Got
point,
it.
I'm not at Second City yet. So I didn't even get my agent in Chicago until I started touring, I think. So this is all still, I'm just auditioning for whatever theater stuff I can, not even knowing how to get an agent, or that's not even really on my mind at that point. I'm just like, my mind is just set on, I want to perform at Second City. So I'm not even thinking about like what that can lead to. My whole thing is, I want to make it to that stage.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So that's where I'm at the time that I'm still working at the Gap.
And when you made it to the Second City stage, were you at the Gap or were you at Kaplan?
So when I got the call that I finally got the touring company, I was at Kaplan. Yes.
Okay.
And Kaplan, so again, it's just a data entry job, but in our little section, it was all actors who knew each other.
I love
So my thing was all just trying to make that entire section laugh. And I did that by like making puppets out of office supplies, doing voices. I mean, to the point where the people behind us were so annoyed. They were so annoyed. And the part that sucked for them is that we were also all just really good at our jobs. So the company was like, we have to keep them. They're obnoxious because all you do is laugh and say stupid shit, but also they're really, really good. Like they're good at like handling customers on the phone and whatever. So, but that job too, it was all about what bits can I do with the props that are here in this office?
I can't find the word that defines it, but I say it on every episode, almost every episode, that you will never find a better employee than an actor, because they want something so much that they are willing to do this job for you overtime just to pay their rent, to stay where they are so that they can go on auditions and do this other stuff half the time for free or pennies, you know? And like, there's just,
or pay to do it.
There's just something about a performance artist that is like, you will not find a more committed person. And when I worked at Nestle, I was a temp. I was working with a temp agency and got that job. And then when I moved into full time, it was because they were like, well, we'll let you take your auditions when you need to, and you can have time off when you book. And it was like, are you kidding me? I'm never leaving. And I, again, would get the job done in 2 hours, but I was scheduled 40 hours a week. When they replaced me as a temp, I got to help pick the person that would replace me. So I got to help interview. And I was like, she's an actor, pick her. Like, don't pick these other people that just don't know what they want to do yet. Like, pick the actor. She's never going to leave until she books something. Like, you guys, it's just a pattern that I notice.
And I think I think this helped answer your question about all the people at the Beverly Center Gap that ended up being actors. Is I think anytime that you deal with any sort of customer service, an actor is always going to be your best bet, because even if we're faking it, we can still be really friendly.
Yes,
and
100%.
be faking it as much as we can. Also, very similar to what you said about earlier about the finding someone that's going to work with your schedule. So after Kaplan, I get touring company, only to find out that it's not full time, and you're only getting paid per show.
Right.
And that means that some months you might have 1 show a week. Some months you might have 2 weeks full of shows. Some months you may have 3 shows for the whole month. So then I had to
come first. You can't
exactly. So then I had to find a job that would be okay with me skipping town randomly while still maintaining that job.
Right.
So I found out that one of the managers that hired me at the previous Gap was now at a baby Gap on the other side of town. She was now managing there. I was like, well, I'm just going to go and tell her my situation and see what happens. I didn't want to work there again. I didn't like it, but I was like, I need to survive when I'm not touring.
You gotta figure it out. Yeah.
So thankfully, she was so happy to see me. And when I told her my situation, she was like, every month that you get your touring schedule, give it to me and I will just put you on when you're in town. And I was like, it couldn't be better than that for me. I was like, that is I hit a gold mine. Like, I was like, I can't say no. Like, who else is going to do this?
That person gets thanked in the Oscar speech.
100%.
Yes,
but you also proved yourself. That's the thing. Like, they would never have let me just be like, oh yeah, sure. Take your lunches, take an extra if you need, and then just stay later. If you hadn't have already proven yourself to be an exemplary employee.
Right.
So touring, I didn't get to do a fun tour, like a Second City tour. I did the auto shows, the International Auto Show tour. And it was great. It paid really well, but it was the same thing, which is why I went into retail also. And I think the thing with retail is that they're always starving for people to like work and pick up shifts that they were totally fine too. I'm like, I'll be gone 2 weeks this month, 1 weekend that month, 6 days here. And it worked out. It worked out in the end, because I think that, as much as we all hate retail, it can be flexible because there is a need and demand for constant, it's a constant turnover of employees in retail.
Yes.
So,
well, much like acting, it is an industry that just constantly needs to grind up the people at the bottom and spit them out.
Yeah.
Got to feed the beast.
But stop shopping online, people, because we need like brick and mortar for our actors to have jobs. Okay.
True. We don't want to deliver Amazon. It doesn't work with our schedule.
It doesn't. It can hurt your back.
So now you're at Baby Gap and you're touring. And
I've moved up to Baby Gap.
You moved up to Baby Gap.
And has your rent maintained at $400 a month?
No, at this point, I'm at another apartment with 2 roommates.
Is it close?
And it's like $200 a month.
This is the furthest. This is like the furthest. I know it's crazy to think. I actually have to get on a train that was not a haunted train with singers in it to get to the new Baby Gap. So yeah, Baby Gap was a whole other ballgame as far as like, I didn't know a thing about sizes. I didn't know a thing about anything. And, but again, thankfully, some of the people that were at the previous Gap had also moved with this manager. So it was a whole other set of people that were really cool to be with. But yeah, same thing. You got a lot of really annoying patrons there as well.
All retail is annoying. It's all annoying. It's people coming in, not casually shopping. It's people coming in because they desperately need something and they waited till the last minute. That is who comes into a store. It's always urgent. And you're like, it's just cotton. What is so imperative that like, it's so urgent. It's so urgent.
I will say that when I started there and it was like my first real job or real customer service job, I remember thinking like, everyone in the world at some point in their life needs to have a customer service job.
Yes.
Because it really makes you think about how to treat people.
Yeah. How to be empathetic.
Yeah. People go in just expecting you to be their like butler or their maid. And it's just like, I'm here to help you, but I'm not here to like, you know, you're not hiring me privately to follow you around the store. And then they'd get upset if you didn't have an item or whatever. And it's like, I'm just the messenger. I'm just the messenger. And I have to check myself too, because even like if I'm on the phone with someone and I'm being really impatient, I have to remember the person I'm speaking to is not the reason why, for the most part, is not the reason why this is happening. So I need to be patient and remember when I was doing customer service, how people were talking to me. And I think everyone just needs to do it. Everyone needs to experience that.
I always try when I'm like, you know, making an angry customer service call. I'm like, all right, first off, I'm going to be pretty hot on this call. It's not you. It's
That's great. I'm sure they appreciate that.
Before too. Like, I'm really upset. I have anxiety. I suffer from panic disorder. I'm just prefacing this call. I do no longer take Lexapro. So let's get through this together. It's a good way to start a call.
But I feel like they appreciate that because I've done that too. And they've been like, because then also it calms you down because then it reminds you that they're not the reason why. They're doing their best to help you for the most part.
For them, it's just an hourly job too, or, you know, it's just their job too.
Yeah. You're the 12th person they've dealt with in the last hour who's upset about something.
Yeah. So you're at Baby Gap, you are touring. How long did you tour? How many years? How many did you just do one? You toured
1 year.
For a year. Okay.
1 year.
And then what happened?
So after I toured, after about a year, they offered me a spot at the Second City, Las Vegas. They had a show in Las Vegas at that time. And that was about 2004. And
were you there with Katie and Steve?
I was just going to ask that.
No, they came after me.
Okay.
I was there with Brian Shortall, Lauren Dowden, Bridget Kloss, Seamus McCarthy. We had just we're the group that kind of replaced like Jason Sudeikis and Kay Cannon and Joe Kelly and those guys. But then Shortall went to do a movie for like a few weeks, and Sudeikis actually came back. He was on hiatus from SNL, and he was like, because Kay was doing the Las Vegas show, so he was like, I'll do this. This is when they were still together.
Yeah.
He's like, I'll do the show. So I got to work with the two of them during that, which is really fun.
That's fun.
So that was 2004. They offered me the the Las Vegas show, which was equity. So it was benefits. It was like a salary. And I'm very lucky to say that was my last part-time job.
That's amazing. Did they do housing, or did you have?
No, we had to pay our own rent, but they basically had like everyone stayed at the same apartment complex, which was like 2 blocks away from the Flamingo, which is where we did our show. Yeah. So it was just a rotating door of actors in that same apartment who was, awesome. I roomed with Brian Shortall and Karen Gracci. And then I think Martin Garcia stayed in my room at some point. So yeah, it was just like everyone was.
How long did you do your residence or your time in Vegas?
So I was there for 5 months. And then that's when Chicago called me and offered me ETC stage in Chicago.
Nice. Let's take a quick break.
And now back to the podcast. So
back to Chicago. Wrote and performed 2 shows on the ETC. And then while this was, I'll never forget this day. I had just shot, at that point, I already had an agent, had been doing a few commercials and stuff. I had done a commercial for Edge shaving cream. So it was always fun to like have a job. And I was leaving that day. I was leaving the set from the Edge commercial, feeling good that I just shot a commercial. And they called me and said, hey, we want to offer you main stage. And I was like, this is the best day. And I was like, yeah, I'll do it. So then wrote and performed 3 shows there, met the Obamas through that, which was really exciting. And then moved to LA in 2008.
And 3 shows is about, that's like a term. That's,
Yeah, apparently now people just do like 1 show and they're out. But like back when I was still there, my run was a pretty normal run of like a couple shows ETC, a couple shows main stage. Mm-hmm. Some people even stayed longer, almost like overstayed their welcome.
Yeah. Yeah. So. Okay, so you have your agent, you did 3 shows, you're like, I'm out. Going to LA. Is that basically how it happened?
Yeah. And my decision to leave Chicago was I wanted to leave when I was still enjoying it. Because I had seen a lot of people not do that and overstay their welcome. So it was tough, but I was like, I want to leave with good memories. I had already been doing a few, I dipped my toes into commercials and stuff. So at that point, a lot of my friends from Chicago had just moved to LA, and I was like, I think it's a good fit. And then another like wonderful blessing was friends of mine who were with my manager, who's still my manager today. My manager would come to Chicago and see a lot of shows, and they're like, hey, Ithamar? He's like, yeah, I've seen him in Chicago when I visit. Well, he's planning to move to LA. So that manager called me while I was in Chicago and was like, heard you moving to LA, just let you know that when you move, you have representation. So that was like, I was like, the choice has been made for
Goosebumps.
The road was paved in golden pillows.
I mean, yeah, or at least in manager, because then I came out to LA and still struggled for a year or two. But it definitely made it easier to make that move, knowing that I came out here with someone already.
So you said when you did Vegas, that was the end of your part-time work. So when you came to LA, you weren't, I mean, I know you were teaching.
I didn't teach until I got to LA. Right. I'm sorry, is that what you're asking? Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So you're teaching improv.
I'm teaching improv in LA. I guess I don't really count that as a part-time job. It's still in the world of.
I agree. We've had this conversation a lot. We had this conversation with yesterday's guest too. And I don't count teaching writing as the hustle. We had it with Stephen Graham Jones too. It fuels the art. It's part of the, not everybody chooses to teach, but if you have like a desire, there's something, I don't know, you just get a bug and you're just like, I really love what I do. So let's let's share, and it fuels the energy, right?
Well, and it trained me to know what a lesson plan for improv looks like, what a class looks like, so that then years later, I was able to offer my own workshops that I designed myself. And then it's almost like as freeing as performing, because you're like, I'm calling the shots. I'm working off of my own ideas and exercises and lesson plan.
This is now at the sketch school, right?
Yeah, I did. I've done one thing at the sketch school. I would say that my last sort of like regular teaching job was also like maybe 4 or 5 years ago, as far as like teaching weekly. Now, if I teach, it'll just be like a 6-week chunk of my own personal workshop.
I love that, because you're bringing to it what works, what you've seen has worked time and time again for you and for others. I think that, you hold the key.
Also, I think it came, that workshop came from, it's about 6 years ago, I wrote and performed a solo show called Ithamar Has Nothing to Say, which was a physical show where I didn't speak. So then that drummed up a lot of interest of people being like, how do you do that? So then that's where I was like, okay, I'm going to design a physical comedy workshop. And that was thrilling for me, because it was basically like, this is my approach to writing my show. Here are the tools, you guys do what you want with them. But so that's been fun when I've had a chance to do that.
And that really led to a series of unfortunate events, right? I mean,
The show didn't lead directly to it. That was just the series of unfortunate events was just audition.
it just felt like because the work you were doing on that show was very much in line with, although you had lines,
yeah.
like the physical work you were doing was.
Yeah, I really lucked out on that. I'm very grateful of the on-screen work that I've been able to do, but I would say that only like 50 to 60% of it have been characters that are like my sweet spot. Like that I'm like, this is what I do very well, and it's a lot of fun. A lot of times, and again, I'm happy to take it, but a lot of times it's more supportive, and you're just kind of like the person who's helping the story along.
Sure.
And that's fine. I'm very grateful, and I've gotten to work with a lot of really wonderful people. But that show in particular, Series of Unfortunate Events, that character was like, this is just me, which is very, it's not very often to feel that. So that was a really fun one.
Yeah, it was.
It was great.
It was a very cool episode of the show.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks, man.
We've kind of skipped over some jobs and that we should circle back to. One of which was you were a host at Dick's Last Resort.
Yeah.
Oh boy, yes, I was. Yeah.
And that's in Chicago too.
Are you familiar with Dick's Last Resort?
I wasn't. Jason explained it to me.
Yes, the premise of the restaurant. It's a restaurant with a premise.
Yes.
So the whole thing is like the servers are rude, and for some reason people really love that. Like there's just something that's fun about the servers yelling at you and whatever. So when I applied, I thought, oh, that'll be fun. But I was a host. As a host, you're not allowed to be fun. As a host, you have to be the cop. You have to be the bad cop. You have to be the person being like, hey, don't stop throwing food. But the waiter threw napkins at me, but you can't throw food
back.
Yeah. So then all of a sudden it's like, oh, here comes Uncle Grumpy, So that was tough and it was a lot of drunk people, a lot of bachelorette parties and frat bros, and that one was tough. I did not enjoy that one either. But I thought I was going in being like, oh, cool, you can have an attitude and it's fun and performing. Not as a host.
No.
And they never let you move into a server position. So you were a host?
No, I was a host. Yeah. That was during that summer that I was doing the internship at Second City.
Oh, wasn't there a place here called Ed DeBevick's that was the same?
Yeah, Ed DeBevick's was a 50s diner, but with the same thing of them being rude.
It's funny because I was rude as a host and nobody appreciated it. It did not work at any of the restaurants.
You were working at Denny's, it just didn't fit.
Yeah, you gotta find a Dick's Last Resort if they're still around.
Was there any theme beyond rudeness?
Not really. No, it was just like rude, drunk. Well, that's the thing that was hard. Is like they let you throw napkins at each other, but then it's like you're gonna get a restaurant full of drunk people to just throw napkins when there's food on their plates and there's like bones and shit. Like you're just gonna do that?
Stupid.
Like
it sounds stupid.
It was real. That was a real tough one.
I hope they shut it down.
Yeah.
I think that one is gone, but I feel like there might still be Dick's.
They're around. I went online and there's two in Vegas and
of course, of course in Vegas. Yeah, that makes sense.
A smattering of them around the country still in operation.
Yeah.
Pretty nifty bio on Dick himself.
I'm sure.
And you never had to do a Second City boat tour. You just did regular tour.
Let's say had to.
I didn't mean to. I didn't mean it that way. I mean, you did. I didn't mean it that way. I misspoke.
I got to.
I know. I guess my had to is because I came to visit Jason. I went and visited him on the boat while he was doing it. And I was like, this is the worst.
I think your 5-month Vegas residency is very similar.
Probably.
To
yeah. From what I've heard from the ship tours, it's you're hanging out with other performers. Like all of our friends were other performers on the strip, so it was a lot of Cirque du Soleil people, a lot of showgirls, magician. I mean, it was crazy.
Carrot Top.
Not those guys. Those they're way too big for us. But through that, I will say, being a performer on the strip, we got free tickets to almost any show we wanted. And we saw some amazing, not on purpose shows, like just some Vegas shows that are just.
When you say not on purpose, meaning you didn't go and see them on purpose, or the show didn't happen on purpose?
The show My definition of what made them amazing was not on purpose, meaning the shows were so bad they were amazing.
Wow.
I guess I should have just said. I could have just said that.
No,
I could have just said that. I could have just said they were so bad they were amazing.
I find that so I it's just strange to me. I was in a sketch group and they, right before I joined, they had a residency, a Vegas show. And I was sort of sad that I was replacing members after that show, because I was like, oh, I want to go to Vegas with you guys and do a show. And they're like, no, that's done, Jaime. It's done. And I was like, okay, there's a lot of like grizzled attitudes towards being a Vegas show.
And believe me, it's I don't know if you had this experience on the ship, Jason, but there's definitely like there's definitely a period where the vacation part of it wears off.
Oh yeah.
Because you're like, I'm gonna live near the strip. I'm gonna be making really good money. I'm gonna meet all these performers. That lasts about 2 weeks.
Yep.
I mean, any trip to Vegas should only be like 2 nights.
3-4 days.
Two nights max. Yeah, I always think touring is like carny work. I did the auto show tour for 2 years, and I was just like, this sucks. Like you pick up your life, you get on a plane, you put on the costume, you do your lines, and then sure, you explore the city in the time you have off, but it sucks to travel that much.
Yeah.
For work. You don't get days off on the front end or the back end usually. And the tours I was on, unless you paid for it yourself, like if you want to.
Yeah, Turco was tough. I love the group I toured with, and I learned a ton doing shows all over the country, but it's a grind. It's a grind. And there's some cities you go to that don't have a lot to do, like on your time off. And there's some cities you don't even get to see because you literally fly in, you do the show, and you fly out first thing in the following morning. So a part of it was really tough. I'm glad I did it. And I'm really good. I'm still really good friends with a lot of the people that I toured with even today. But it was tough. It was tough.
Yeah. I remember I started my tour right 9/11 happened. And they shut us down, and then they were like, we're going to bus you to Texas from Michigan. Instead, they figured it all out. Airlines went back up, new measures are in place, whatever. But it was good money. And I would get $50 per diem every day. And it only cost me $10 to eat. So like that was $40 I pocketed on top of my, pay.
Take home pay. Yeah.
Take home.
Oh yeah. That
was great.
Those per diem Jedi tricks are very fun and come in very handy. Like I was the same way when we're on tour. It's like, how can I make this per diem last me until I get home? Like I want this cash when I get back to Chicago. So how can I be efficient? Yeah.
It got me to Los Angeles. Like I drove my car to Los Angeles after 3, I think I've been saved. And then that per diem money was like, I did it just for that.
I mean, one of the best perks about performing in Vegas at the Flamingo is that we had access to their 24-hour cafeteria.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That was, I mean, for me, I was like, that's the gig. That's the gig itself. Like, that's why I'm doing it. Like,
So we've got one other job that you mentioned, and I don't know when this took place in relation to your performing career at Second City, but you were also a host and usher and a runner at the Second City, which for anyone who hasn't had the privilege of going to a show at Second City, they got drinks and food service too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So where were you in your career there?
So that was the same summer I was doing my internship.
Okay.
So it was perfect because I got to see shows every single night. And it was such a huge teacher for me. And the people I was seeing, I mean, on main stage, we had Kevin Dorff, TJ Jagodowski, Rich Tallarico, Susan Messing, Stephanie Weir, and Tammy Sager. And there was a show called Paradigm Lost, I believe. Mm-hmm. And I can still tell you most of the sketches. I mean, it was just amazing. ETC had a great show too with Martin Garcia and Sue Gillen. Later like Jack McBrayer and those guys. So it was a thrill to watch and to learn the sketches, learn the rhythm of the sketches, seeing understudies come in and put their spin on it. That part was great. The working part again was not very fun, but being able to just like watch the shows over and over. But again, as the usher, we were the cops who had to tell audience members to be quiet, which then when I became a performer, I appreciated so much.
Yeah, I imagine.
Because people who don't, it's tough because at Second City, it's a mixture of sketch and improv.
Mm-hmm.
So once you open that improv Pandora's box,
Yeah.
then people think they can yell out whenever they want. So it's hard to like, as the usher, it was really tough to like, oh, I have to go tell these drunk people to be quiet. As a performer, you're like, you're messing up my rhythm, man. Like this is not. But I also understand why people who aren't familiar with that type of show wouldn't know when to yell back and when to be quiet, basically.
Sure. And in Chicago, you've got a pretty well-educated audience in terms of what improv is. No? I mean...
You'd still get a lot of just drunk parties. Again, bachelor parties, frat, a lot of corporate, like corporate outings.
Yeah.
So then it was like, if half the house was from one company, then it's like every suggestion was, Rick's pants or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, we don't know who Rick is or what his pants
What
have
his
anything
pants
to do.
did.
But you, as a Gap employee, were familiar with pants and lawn.
I was like, yeah, what kind of pants, sir? Got it. Thank you.
CNC? Okay. When you finished your third show at Second City and you were making that decision of what's next, and I remember you said back when you were at ASU and Second City, you were looking at like that was the goal and that was it. You weren't looking beyond it. When did the sky move higher for you or change?
It was I don't know if I could pinpoint exactly what happened, but there was just some time during that I had done my third show on the main stage. I was definitely like one of the veterans. And I think part of me was like, I think I'm done. I think I've done what I wanted to do here. Like I did Second City. Like I was like, I've done it. It's been an amazing experience. And it was just kind of a what's next.
Mm-hmm.
And
how long were you in Chicago?
Overall, 8 years.
Great.
And
perfect.
I was performed at Second City probably 6 of those years.
Yeah.
Give or take. So yeah, I feel like I was like, and I think I'd start dipping my toe in commercials and I was like, oh, this is new. This is exciting. I felt nice and comfortable at Second City, which is always a clue to do something else that's scary and challenging. So also I think part of me was like, I miss my weather, my sunny days.
Yeah.
That part was really tough. I love Chicago. Chicago is probably my favorite city in the world, minus the fact that like some days the sun wouldn't even come out and I was just so depressed. So part of it was like dipping my toe into the on-screen stuff, which is a challenge and new for me, and going to a climate that just works way better for me and my soul. So that was basically, I was just like, okay, I think I'm done. I think my it kind of felt like a grad school almost. Like, okay, I've done Chicago. I've done Second City, then Chicago. What's next?
Yeah. So you put in the work. And when you got here, all that work paid off. Like, it's nice that you haven't had to side hustle in Tinseltown.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm not coasting for sure. I'm not coasting.
No,
it's
you're
still,
working.
It's still a hustle, but
absolutely.
And it took a while. Like it took 2 years to really get that going because, I moved to LA thinking Chicago, Second City alum, let the doors fly wide open. And that did not happen at all. So, which was good in retrospect. I'm glad that I had to like work hard again. And
well, you said it was time for something challenging and yeah. LA has a way of humbling.
Oh yeah.
And confusing.
Can I ask you a question? And I'm very glad to know that you haven't had to side hustle, and I hope you don't. But if like, whatever, a lean year happens and you've said, oh shoot, this year I've got to do something that's not acting just to, close the gap. Would you go back to any of the things you've done before, or what would be your like dream other job to do?
I wouldn't go back to anything I've done before, but honestly, if I had to pick like a job that would be somewhat flexible and something that I would probably enjoy doing, it would probably still be customer service, but it would be like in a bookstore.
Yeah.
See, I say this every freaking episode too, and y'all yell at me and you're like, ugh, way to not make any money. You just want to starve to death, Jaime. And I'm like, maybe I do.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe.
Yeah, but what part-time job is not going to do? I mean, what part-time job do you just land and you're like, I'm making 6 figures a year? Like that's not like that's not a thing, right?
Listen, you're a very good actor. I think that you could finagle your way into getting a very comfortable part-time job. I'm just saying.
You
but
may
no,
remember me from a corporate show you saw at Second City, Chicago.
Yeah. Can I now be your director of operations? Thank you.
I'll be taking early lunches and late lunches.
Let's talk about Jeff's pants.
Rick.
Damn it.
See,
you lost the job, Jason. You lost the job already.
No, I think it's awesome. And can I ask you this question? And you don't have to answer it. I can edit it out, but you're married.
Mm-hmm.
Is your
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Haven't spoken since then.
Is your wife in the business as well, or does she have a mainstream job?
Both. She's also in the business. She writes a lot. She has a very successful one-woman show, which we just found out is going to be in Edinburgh this summer. So, which was one of her goals. So we're really excited about that. But yeah, she has some part-time work. But again, she's gotten to a point where she's like, I'm only going to do the part-time work that I really enjoy and work with people that I really enjoy. So she's working with people that she's known for a very long time. And, it just makes it kind of like more fun for her to do that while still working on this show and being able to take the time to tour the show and performing at festivals and go to freaking Scotland for a month. So
you're not really a sugar baby. I was like, she's going to be some like, should I have some?
Are you going to go to Scotland too?
I'll probably be out there for like a week and then probably come back. I probably can't and shouldn't be out of LA for too long, just to open myself up for it. But also nowadays, who knows what's going to be happening then? Like, who knows?
Sure. Listen,
that's the thing
you book
now.
yourself out for a month,
world.
I guarantee they'll shoot Wandavision too.
Exactly.
You book yourself out and you're going to have 6 bookings. I mean, every time we book ourselves out, they're like, hey, you have an audition though now. And you're like, I literally not for a year. And I booked myself out and now you're giving me one. I don't understand the process. What's this process?
Yep.
I'm just gonna book myself out all the time.
I know. I would just keep planning vacations.
I'm moving to France.
And then they're like, cool, best of luck. Oh shit, that didn't work. That didn't work.
We actually had friends who are actors that did that.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. That's nice.
Are they working?
I don't know.
Yeah, that Amazon show that didn't go, and then that's the last thing I know it did.
Yeah.
Cool.
Anyways.
Well, you know what? This has been amazing.
This has been amazing. Thank you so much. We super appreciate you. But before we say goodbye, I just want to know what's upcoming.
Yeah, what's going on with Ithamar?
So I'm actually next week going to Syracuse, New York for a few weeks to shoot a movie. I don't know. I haven't signed an NDA, but just to be safe. I won't say, I'll just say that it is a holiday movie for a streaming service. And I'm sure if you Google all the things I've just said, you could probably figure out what it is. But anyway, so that's what I'm doing in a week. Speaking of not wanting to be in the cold, they're throwing me right in the middle of it.
What happened to sound stages and fake snow?
not this production.
Damn,
no, but it's a really fun role. And again, it's the type of role I described before, which is like right in my sweet spot.
Oh, that's great.
Congratulations.
And thank you so much. It has been awesome talking to you.
Yes. It's just so good to see you guys.
She showed on Monday. He is just the best, isn't he?
The best.
And next week's guest is also the best.
Oh my God, I am so excited to have her on the show. It's the incredible writer and artist, Gloria Harrison.
You call me lazy, you think I'm crazy, so why'd you come around? She want my money, but I got no money. This ain't no savings and loan.